When messages from Naomi, from Nicole, even from Martin went ignored. When all signals from her seemed smothered by something too vast and too dark to name. The first person to rush to her aid was Dany, and that was worse than anyone could have imagined. Not because Dany didn't want to help, but because she was the one Hayley feared most in that moment. Maybe it was the cold sharpness in Dany's eyes. Maybe it was the unspoken secret they once shared. Or maybe Dany simply knew too much, too deeply. Or perhaps Dany was the very person Hayley had been running from all along. When Dany touched her shoulder, Hayley recoiled from her own pain, using the last of her strength to shove her away. And in that moment, everyone watching understood. This wasn't just an accident, not a biological complication, not just a sudden miscarriage. It was an explosion of lies and long-buried emotional wounds erupting at their breaking point. The blood seeping from between Hayley's legs was like a sentence passed on herself. Proof that everything she had constructed over the past 2 months, from ambiguous prenatal visits to forged ultrasound images, was now being betrayed by her own body. But what really happened? Hayley had insisted the baby was Kenny's, and during a lavish party of champagne and expensive perfume at the Dupree estate, she had even made Vernon nod in reluctant acknowledgement of the potential blood connection. When Naomi raised her doubts, Hayley produced a prenatal document that, according to Nicole in a whisper to Anita, may have been altered. Still, no one dared question her, because if she was telling the truth, the child in her womb would be the bridge between two rival power factions quietly battling for inheritance. So when Hayley collapsed at Uptown's doorstep, trembling, bleeding, no one could say. As bystanders began filming the scene, videos that spread like wildfire on social media, followed by a flood of comments, speculations, and wild theories. One voice among them asked, if Hayley was never pregnant, why was there so much blood? Was it possible she had been pregnant? But what occurred now was the result of a fall, an assault, or even a suicide attempt disguised as an accident. Hayley was rushed to the hospital with severe blood loss, but doctors found no evidence of any fetal tissue. No placenta, no amniotic sac, nothing, just a deep vaginal tear, the kind inflicted not from within but by an external object. The police were called. Hayley refused to speak. She identified no attacker, didn't say she had been assaulted, didn't claim it was self-inflicted. She only repeated, she needed time. Meanwhile, Dany, who had shared a complicated history with Hayley since their academy days, began her own investigation. Sneaking into the hospital room at midnight, she saw Hayley murmuring in her sleep, whispering a name that shook Dany to the core. Martin. If Hayley was hiding something tied to Martin, the largest shareholder of Fairmont Crest, this wasn't just a miscarriage anymore. It was a link in a far more dangerous chain. Naomi began questioning Kenny's behavior after spotting him sneaking out of Hayley's apartment at midnight 3 nights prior. Anita remembered Hayley asking for money to buy special vitamins from a private clinic of dubious origin. Everything started pointing in one direction. Hayley had staged a fake pregnancy to gain something: money, power, or perhaps love. But what she received in return was blood, pain, and utter isolation. And if Dany's suspicions were correct, that someone had forced Hayley into this charade to conceal a more sinister secret, then the person behind it wasn't just a saboteur, but a potential killer pulling strings like a puppeteer. When police discovered a scrap of paper in Hayley's room, scrawled with trembling handwriting, "If I speak, we all die," every theory gained traction. And the real question was no longer whether Hayley had ever truly been pregnant, but what she was hiding, and why blood was the only way out. The answer may lie in the shadows, where the last person Hayley ever trusted is sharpening their revenge with the very secrets she once tried to bury. And if Hayley doesn't survive, she will take that secret to the grave, leaving everyone else behind to live with paranoia, dread, and a future spiraling out of control. But if she lives, then the day she speaks will be the day Fairmont Crest burns. No one could deny that the image of Hayley collapsing in the middle of Uptown, hands soaked in blood, face pale, eyes silently screaming for help, was the most shocking moment Fairmont Crest had witnessed in months. But what no one knew or dared to consider was that she might not have been just a victim in this bloody game. There was something unsettling in Hayley's chilling silence as she sat on the hospital bench. The light casting across her face not to reveal pain might have merely been a veil covering a meticulously constructed plan, one she had nurtured for weeks, maybe even months, perhaps since before she ever claimed to be pregnant at all. Because if she was never truly pregnant, then what had happened? And why was there blood? The answer may lie with the very person she tried to blame, Dany. Dany's nearly instantaneous appearance at the scene was not only suspicious, it was exactly what Hayley needed. If this event was staged, then Dany was the only audience Hayley wanted. Not to save her, but to be blamed. Dany could have been the first witness, but that also meant she could be the first suspect if Hayley were to claim the injury resulted from an altercation. A push. It was a precision strike aimed at multiple targets at once. Hayley didn't only want to shatter the trust between Dany and everyone around her. She wanted to destroy the fragile thread between Dany and Bill, the man Hayley had once approached with sweetness, soft words, pleading eyes, and tears dropped right on cue. She knew Bill still held feelings for Dany, but those could be shaken if laced with suspicion, if twisted with guilt. And if Hayley had lost a baby due to Dany's violence, or even just her negligence, could Bill forgive her? Or would he begin to look at Dany differently? Doubt was the sweetest poison Hayley could inject between them, and she wasn't above harming her own body to ensure that poison took hold. But would it really be that easy? What Hayley hadn't anticipated was that Dany wasn't like the other women in the Dupree household. Dany had been betrayed, belittled, pushed to her limits, and this time, she sensed something was off from the moment she locked eyes with Hayley in Uptown. It wasn't the blood. It wasn't the pain. It was the absence of true desperation in Hayley's eyes. Dany felt like she was being played, like prey walking willingly into a trap spun from fake tears and theatrical agony. And Dany wasn't the only one sensing it. Naomi found it strange when she discovered Hayley had recently purchased a large quantity of synthetic blood from a supplier that specialized in medical props. Nicole, on the other hand, received an anonymous message urging her to stay quiet about helping Hayley edit ultrasound images. Meanwhile, Martin uncovered that the security camera feed from Uptown had mysteriously cut out during the exact window when Hayley entered the restroom just before the blood appeared. A coincidence that only Mion, highly skilled, could have orchestrated. And most telling of all, there was no verifiable proof Hayley had ever been pregnant beyond her word. No official hospital records. No legitimate obstetrician's name. Everything pointed to a carefully constructed narrative, and if the target was Dany, then the question became, why did Hayley hate her that much? It might have been about Bill. Or perhaps it ran deeper, a long-harbored personal vendetta. Years ago, Dany had unintentionally sabotaged a project led by Hayley, costing her a coveted seat on the board of a prestigious charity. Hayley had never forgotten. It's possible that every move she made after arriving in Fairmont Crest was calculated revenge. Most of all, if Bill turned his back on Dany, if Naomi grew suspicious, if Vernon and Anita started to view Dany as a threat, then Hayley would have succeeded, not only in avenging herself, but also in destabilizing the Dupree family from within, paving her way to deeper influence and trust. But what Hayley didn't know was that she was being watched too. Another figure, hiding in plain sight, someone who knew her past better than anyone at Fairmont Crest. This person had been collecting evidence, preparing a countermove that Hayley could never see coming, because the threat wasn't from the outside. It was from within, from someone she trusted, someone who pretended to help her by synthetic blood, who posed as a doctor, and who was now preparing to betray her to save themselves. The plan that once seemed airtight was starting to fracture. The cracks were thin but razor-sharp, and when they broke wide open, Hayley wouldn't just lose her status as a victim, she'd be exposed as a cold manipulator who used her own body as a pawn in a dangerous game. Then no one would believe her, no one would pity her, and all that would remain from the bloody spectacle in Uptown would be revulsion. But until the truth is revealed, Hayley still has time. She's still playing the role of the grieving mother, still lying in a hospital bed, eyes occasionally wet with tears, lips trembling with fragmented laments, her hand still clinging to that fake ultrasound photo as if it were her final weapon. Will she manage to pull someone else into her orbit before she's exposed? Or will Dany bring the truth into the light before she herself is consumed by this elaborate trap? Or will a third player, the one watching them both, strike first, seizing control of the entire board? The answer lies in the next moment, where lies revenge, ambition, and blood will swirl together to create a storm that no one in Fairmont Crest will escape.